I'm Emma Caldwell, 31, a marketing strategist from Seattle who once believed in happily ever after until my sister and my fiancé taught me what betrayal really tastes like. They didn't just break my heart. They tried to erase me, replace me, and invite me to smile through it. What they didn't expect was that I'd walk into their wedding wearing the truth like silk and leave with more than dignity. I left with my power. But before I tell you how I went from blindsided to untouchable and why my RSVP came with a plan, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by the people you loved most and came back stronger than they ever imagined. I used to believe my life was perfect, until the person I loved most handed me over to the one I trusted least. The spring air drifted through the half-open balcony doors of my apartment, carrying the scent of early cherry blossoms and distant rain. Seattle was always good at pretending it was gentler than it really was. Much like Jason. Much like my life. I slipped off my heels, lined them against the baseboard by habit, and glanced around the apartment. Everything was in its place. Sterile, pristine, curated. The same way I kept my life. On the outside, at least. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Chloe. "You ready for tonight? Your mom's infamous roast chicken awaits." And her pointed comments about how I'm too uptight. I replied, "Emma, honey, don't be late." Mom's voice echoed in my memory like a chime I couldn't silence. She always said Brianna was free-spirited. I never realized that meant she didn't believe in boundaries. Jason walked out of the bedroom, still adjusting his tie, phone pressed to his ear. "Yeah, no, I'll call you back," he mumbled before hanging up too fast. He caught my gaze. "Work," he explained. "Client stuff." I nodded, pretending to believe him. Dinner at my parents' house was its usual symphony of contradictions. Dad beamed when we walked in, arms wide, voice warm. Mom barely looked up from her wine glass before remarking, "You're a little late. Hope traffic's a better excuse than your schedule." Then Brianna arrived. She burst through the front door in a swish of silk and wind, cheeks flushed with drama, voice too loud for the quiet suburb. "Emma, Jason, oh my God, it's been forever." She hugged me like we were still kids, like we hadn't gone 3 months without speaking after her abrupt move to New York. Her arms lingered too long around Jason. I noticed the way his hand rested gently on the small of her back. She pulled away, eyes sparkling. "Jay and I were just texting about that gallery opening in Brooklyn. You'd love it, Emma. So much color. So much soul." "Jay?" Jason smiled. Tight. It was just a quick note. Dinner stretched into vague anecdotes and half-sipped wine. Brianna talked about her latest immersive art installation. Mom gushed, Dad looked bemused, and Jason laughed too easily. When I brought up our engagement party, he brushed the conversation aside like lint on a cuff. "We haven't locked anything in yet," he said, glancing at his plate. I stared at him. "You said you'd email the venue last week." "I've been swamped. You know how it is." Brianna leaned in. "Jason just gets it, you know? Some people see beyond form. They connect to meaning." She looked directly at me. "Not everyone does." I chewed slowly, letting her words sit in my mouth like something sour. Back home, Jason fell asleep on the couch, the TV humming low. I showered, changed into cotton shorts and a tank top, then padded barefoot into the kitchen. I poured a glass of water and caught my reflection in the microwave door. Tired. Too put together, cracking at the corners, a muted chime from the living room. Jason's laptop, the screen lit up, unlocked. No password. An open browser window blinked in soft blue. I shouldn't have looked. But I did. The tab was still active. An image. Brianna, wrapped in deep red lace, lit by candlelight. Her arms stretched over her head, expression unreadable. The file name. For you. Don't show her. My pulse slowed. My grip on the glass didn't. It trembled, but I held still. No tears. No breath. Jason stirred from the couch. I shut the laptop quietly and slipped back into the bedroom before he could fully wake. I lay beside him. Every inhale was steady, every heartbeat too loud. Then he rolled over, brushing my arm in his sleep, and whispered, "I shouldn't, but I can't help it." I expected betrayal from strangers, not the woman who shared my childhood and the man who swore to share my life. The morning light cut through the curtains like a scalpel. Too bright, too precise. I lay still, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan rotating with mechanical indifference. Jason's breathing was steady beside me, as if last night hadn't happened, as if the world hadn't cracked open under my feet. He stirred. I waited. When he turned over and mumbled something about coffee, I forced myself upright, each movement calculated to appear casual. My fingers found his phone on the nightstand. No password. Just like his laptop. It should have felt like a violation. But it didn't. It felt like a confirmation. The screen lit up with a string of messages. "Brianna can't stop thinking about last week. You taste like rebellion. She doesn't know you like I do. She never could. Promise me you won't back out." My throat went dry. I scrolled. There was a photo. Just her hand, fingers curled, a familiar birthmark visible on the wrist. She was holding Jason's tie. He walked into the room just as I dropped the phone onto the bed. His eyes flicked from the phone to my face. "Emma." "You lied," I said, my voice calm in a way that frightened even me. "You lied, and I let you. I watched you lie and pretended not to see it." He stepped closer. "It's not what you think." I laughed, a sound that came from a place I didn't know existed in me. "Don't insult me." Jason ran a hand through his hair, pacing. "We didn't plan it. It just happened." I stood there barefoot in a shirt I had once stolen from his drawer because it smelled like safety. Now it felt like a costume in a cruel play. "You just happened into my sister?" His expression twisted. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "But you did." Silence. The kind that doesn't echo, just suffocates. I left without another word. Rain greeted me like an accomplice, drenching my coat, sticking my hair to my face. I didn't care. I walked. Past the apartment building, past the deli Jason used to surprise me from, past the mural Brianna once took photos beside, calling it divine chaos. My legs moved without destination, my heart a metronome of betrayal. By the time I reached the all-night cafe, my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't hold the cup the barista offered. I huddled in the corner booth, a crumpled receipt clutched in one fist like an anchor. The cafe smelled of cinnamon and burnt espresso. Warmth pressed around me, but couldn't get in. A chair scraped. I didn't have to look to know it was Chloe. She slid into the seat across from me, brows furrowed, hair still messy from sleep. "You didn't answer your phone." "I left it. Or maybe I lost it." "You're soaked," she said gently, draping her scarf over my shoulders. "What happened?" I wanted to say it, to scream it. Instead, I whispered, "He chose her." Chloe's lips parted, but no sound came. She reached across the table, touching my trembling hand. I didn't cry. Couldn't. My body refused. "Revenge?" she asked carefully. I shook my head. She nodded. "Good. Revenge burns, redemption builds." I didn't answer. Later, back at her place, she tucked me into the guest bed and left tea beside me. I stared at the ceiling, the smell of vanilla candles, the quiet hum of a heater. Somewhere it was still raining. My phone buzzed. Chloe had found it in my coat. One new message. "Mom, Brianna and Jason are getting married. Please don't make a scene." No exclamation point, no apology, just a command. An erasure. The next day, a knock at the door. I opened it to find a slim, cream-colored envelope on the welcome mat. My name in swirling gold letters. No return address. But I didn't need one. I broke the seal with surgical precision. Together with their families, Brianna Lynn Caldwell and Jason Matthew Bennett request the honor of your presence at their wedding. I read it 3 times. The words didn't change. The nausea didn't fade. I stood there for a long time, the envelope still in my hand, fingers smudging the ink. If they think I'm just going to stay quiet, they've forgotten who I am. If they're going to flaunt their new happiness in front of me, I'll make sure I look like the woman they never deserved. The gym smelled like metal, sweat, and determination. My arms trembled with the last rep, muscles burning, but I didn't stop. Not until the timer buzzed. I dropped the weights with a controlled exhale and let the ache ripple through me. Pain I could manage. Pain had rules. Unlike betrayal. Chloe leaned against the mirrored wall, arms crossed, sipping from her protein smoothie like it was a martini. You know, she mused, this is the first time I've seen you work out without muttering about it. I wiped my forehead, tossing the towel over my shoulder. I'm not here for cardio. I'm here for war. She grinned. That's what I like to hear. Back at her apartment, now unofficially dubbed the War Room, Chloe rolled out a hand-drawn flowchart on butcher paper that covered half her dining table. Operation Red Phoenix, she declared, tapping a marker against the first square. Glow-up phase. We rise from the ashes in heels and highlighter. Phoenixes don't wear heels, I muttered. This one does. Louboutin. Size 7. She winked. Step 1. Erase their last mental image of you as devastated, betrayed Emma. Step 2. Replace it with, damn, did we make a mistake? Emma. I didn't argue. I let her plan. Over the next few days, I let the silence become my fuel. Gym at dawn. Skincare routines I used to scoff at. Stylists who spoke like artists and gestured like generals. Antonio stood behind me at the salon, a streak of silver in his hair and half-moon glasses perched on his nose. Darling, he breathed, running a hand through my newly cut waves. You've always been beautiful, but this is armor. He wrapped me in a crimson dress that hugged like a secret and shimmered like a dare. I didn't smile. Not yet. But I did look in the mirror and nod. The fundraiser buzzed with champagne and whispered alliances. I stepped into the marble hall, red dress catching every glint of light, heels clicking like punctuation. Heads turned. That was the point. I moved through the crowd with Chloe beside me, her voice low and conspiratorial. You look like vengeance in silk. Not vengeance, I said. Clarity. We passed beneath a crystal chandelier when someone bumped my elbow. My wine sloshed, a splash landing squarely on a stranger's crisp white pocket square. I started, reaching for a napkin. He caught my hand gently. Let me guess. You only spill wine on men you want to impress? His smile was quick, not smug, and his eyes, steel blue, held something startlingly calm, like a shoreline after a storm. I usually go for red wine and subtle insults, I replied. Then I'm honored. He dabbed at his jacket, completely unbothered. Lucas, he said, extending a clean hand. Architect. Poor victim of flying Merlot. Emma, I replied. Ah, the Emma, he said. Mutual friends warned me you were unforgettable. They weren't wrong. I should have deflected. Should have slipped away with a polite nod. Instead, I stayed. He offered to walk me to the bar for a refill. We talked. About buildings that last and feelings that don't. He didn't pry. Didn't flinch when I mentioned complicated family dynamics. When we rejoined Chloe, she gave me a look like a cat who'd discovered a mouse under her pillow. That, she whispered, is the guy you bring to a wedding just to ruin their night. I raised a brow. He's just a guy with good shoulders. Shoulders that would look amazing next to a shattered ex-fiancé, she said sweetly. Later, as the event wound down, Lucas stood beside me near the exit, hands in his pockets. I took a breath. Want to be my date to a wedding that's going to need popcorn? He didn't blink. "If I get to walk in with you," he said, "consider me in, even if it's a trap." They invited me hoping I'd watch quietly from the shadows. They didn't expect me to shine in their spotlight. The Crystal Pines Resort looked like it had been plucked from a bridal magazine. Gleaming windows, fragrant gardens, and a lake so still it mirrored everything except the tension in the air. I stepped out of the car with Lucas at my side, the hem of my satin dress catching the breeze. Heads turned before I even reached the entrance of the Lakeview Ballroom. Chloe's text buzzed in my clutch before I'd taken 10 steps. "It's working. You're winning without saying a word." I didn't need to look around to confirm it. The murmur of guests, the subtle glances, the too long stares, they said it all. I wasn't the scorned ex anymore. I was something sharper, brighter. Brianna saw me before Jason did. Her eyes widened, but her smile snapped into place like a poorly applied mask. Jason turned a second later, drink halfway to his lips. He froze for half a breath too long. I walked past them, nodding politely, Lucas's hand resting lightly on the small of my back, just enough to feel like protection without possession. Every move choreographed, but natural, effortless. Friday's welcome cocktail was full of clinks, laughter, and people pretending not to gawk. Lucas charmed the crowd like he'd known them for years. Every time someone tried to ask a loaded question, he redirected it with humor and wit. At one point, someone muttered near the bar, "Is that Emma's new guy?" Another voice replied, "Whatever happened, she's clearly landed on her feet." By Saturday's rehearsal dinner, Brianna was visibly unraveling. Her laugh was too high, her jokes just a hair too sharp. Jason stayed near the edge of the crowd, his gaze drifting to me like a compass stuck on north. Then came the moment. Brianna took the mic under the guise of thanking guests. Her smile glittered like the rhinestones on her heels. "Love is funny," she began. "Not every love story ends the way you expect. Sometimes it ends better, with the right people, the ones who truly get you." Laughter bubbled through the room, uneasy and scattered. She looked at me when she said it, like a challenge, like a dare. I didn't blink. I simply raised my glass. "To better endings," I said. My voice was calm, steady. Lucas stood. "To second chances that aren't stolen," he added with a smile. "And to wine that doesn't stain too badly if you spill it on someone new." The room laughed, louder this time. The tension dissolved like sugar in champagne. Brianna sat. Later, I stepped out onto the terrace for air. The lake shimmered under the moonlight, and for the first time in weeks, I could breathe without weight. "Emma?" Jason's voice came from behind. I didn't turn. Not right away. He walked to stand beside me, not too close. "Are you happy? With him?" I looked at the water, then at him. "I'm happier than you could ever make me," I said softly, "because I'm not pretending anymore." He didn't respond. His silence said enough. As I re-entered the ballroom, Brianna was waiting just past the doors. Her eyes burned. "You being here is pathetic," she hissed. I met her gaze evenly. "No," I said. "It's powerful. You'll learn the difference eventually." And I walked past her, shoulders straight, heels steady, the spotlight exactly where it belonged. They called it moving on. But what they really did was traded down. The reception glittered with excess. Chandeliers dripped with crystals like frozen tears, and the string quartet played something too polished, too perfect. Guests milled around the grand ballroom in tuxedos and silk gowns, but beneath the surface shimmered a tension so thick it pulsed with every clink of a champagne glass. Lucas stood beside me, calm as ever. His presence was grounding, like gravity in a room where everything else floated on awkward smiles and whispered judgments. We weren't seated near the bridal table. That was by design. But we didn't need to be. People found us. Not with direct questions, but with eyes that lingered too long and phrases loaded like spring traps. "I mean, sisters?" a woman murmured behind her napkin. Imagine giving up Emma Caldwell, someone whispered with the reverence of a cautionary tale. Jason heard it. Of course he did. His expression tightened every time someone looked past him and toward me. Brianna stood abruptly during dinner, flute raised, voice slightly too high for comfort. To love, she declared, to unexpected twists and finding what you never knew you were missing. A few people clapped, mostly out of reflex. She glanced at me, smiled too wide, sat too quickly. Lucas leaned toward me, whispering, "Overcompensating is the sincerest form of insecurity." I bit back a laugh. Then the microphone sat lonely on its stand, the silence after Brianna's toast stretching like a rubber band begging to snap. Lucas stood. No script, no hesitation. He didn't look at Brianna or Jason. He looked at the crowd. "There are people in this room," he began, "who think love is about taking what you want, about reaching out regardless of who gets hurt. But that's not love. That's hunger. Real love isn't about possession. It's about recognition. You see something of worth, and you hold on, not out of greed, but reverence." The room stilled. His voice was steady, his eyes unwavering. I've seen people throw away diamonds because they didn't know how to polish them. They chose glitter over depth, easy over earned. I felt every word in my chest, a slow, expanding warmth I hadn't expected. Lucas glanced at me. Not long, not theatrically, just enough. "And for the record," he said, lifting his glass, "she's not a leftover. She's the main course everyone wishes they hadn't passed up." The crowd exhaled. Some laughed softly. Some clapped. Some looked down at their plates, unsure how to proceed. Jason pushed his chair back hard enough that it scraped the floor. He didn't look at anyone as he walked past the dessert table, past the open bar, through the ornate double doors that led to the patio. A friend of his, Mark, if memory served, called after him. "Hey man, you okay? You look like you've lost more than you gained." Jason didn't answer. I watched through the glass as he lit a cigarette with shaking hands. He hadn't smoked in years, and for the first time since everything fell apart, I didn't feel small. I felt seen, chosen, and finally, free. You don't need revenge when your life becomes the answer to their cruelty. The rain had finally lifted in Seattle, leaving the air crisp and the city glittering with post-storm clarity. I stepped back into my office, where the morning light slanted across my desk like a welcome mat. A memo waited in my inbox, short and direct. Offer finalized. Vice President of Strategy. Board unanimously approved. I stared at it for a moment, then clicked accept without hesitation. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt right. Balanced. Rooted. Weeks had passed since the wedding. Time didn't erase everything, but it settled it. Like dust. Like ash. When the family lunch came, I went. Not because I had something to prove, but because I had nothing left to fear. We sat on the patio of a quiet bistro, the kind with too many tiny forks and perfect lemon water. Brianna arrived late. Her sunglasses stayed on for most of the meal. She made small jokes, trying to summon the carefree version of herself that once stole every room, but her voice cracked at the edges. "So," she said, swirling her iced tea, "that wedding really stirred the pot, huh?" I looked at her. I didn't laugh. I didn't bite. "I guess it did," I said, then turned to ask my father about his new greenhouse. Mom gave me a look, something softer than before. Maybe guilt, maybe realization. Dad simply gave me the quiet nod he always reserved for moments when words weren't enough. That was all I needed. That evening, Lucas texted, "Rooftop, wear something that makes you feel like fire." I arrived just before sunset. The view was sweeping. Seattle stretched out below us, golden at the edges. Lucas had set a small table, candles flickering against the breeze and a playlist humming in the background, quiet enough to let the silence speak. He looked nervous. It made him impossibly endearing. After dinner, grilled salmon, wild rice, strawberries soaked in balsamic. He reached into his pocket. Not fast, not dramatic. A ring. Simple. Silver. Clean lines. "This isn't a promise to save you," he said. "It's a promise to walk beside you." I took the box, held it between us, and smiled. "Yes," I said, "to all of it." We didn't need fireworks. We had peace and laughter and choice. Later, alone in my apartment, I opened the drawer I'd avoided for weeks. The wedding invitation sat inside, still pristine in its cream envelope, like a scar that never bled. I walked to the fireplace, tossed it in. The flames curled around the corners, swallowing gold lettering and hollow promises. As the last of it turned to smoke, I whispered, "Let that chapter burn." Then I turned off the lights, stepped into the quiet, and closed the door behind me. No longer haunted, no longer waiting. Just free. In the quiet aftermath, she didn't need to shout her victory. Her silence said everything. The ones who betrayed her stood exposed, not by vengeance, but by the weight of their own choices. Justice didn't storm in with fury. It arrived dressed in grace, timing its entrance for maximum truth. Like the final chord of a long-forgotten melody, justice may arrive late, but it resonates powerfully once it's heard. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply becoming the version of yourself they never believed you could be.